My name's Zach, and I am with GreaterGood.org's Rescue Rebuild program. And we're out here in beautiful Springfield, Colorado. And we have the honor to be helping a great organization, the Wild Animal Sanctuary, build a brand new 50-acre tiger habitat. We've got our work cut out for us out here. And one of the things that we're going to be doing while we're out here is installing a ton of fencing. We've been working with Nail Gun Depot and some different tool manufacturers who have been gracious enough to provide us with their staplers to see how they do in a really harsh environment and see what the pros and cons of these different tools are. The Bosch Stitch is the one that we've used in the past for projects like this. It's done a good job, but after 5,000 or 10,000 staples, it starts having seals that come loose, and we have to start taking them apart and making minor repairs to get them back up and running. So we'd like to see how these other brands compare. And so we've got an Everwin, a Spot Nails, a Senko, and a DeWalt. And we're gonna get all these out and put them through their paces. We're gonna see how reliable they are, how consistent they are, how easy they are to use, and how their price compares to all of the results of those other tests. Nail Gun Depot has provided us 50,000 of their own staples, and then Senko sent along 15,000 staples. Their gun requires a slightly different staple. So just some first impressions on these staplers. We see a lot of things that are very similar, but there are also some notable differences. As we look at the Everwin first, this is really similar to the Bosch Stitch that we're used to. The castings on the top are nearly identical, and so I think it's a good chance these are probably made by the same company or in the same factory. Magazine is very simple to operate, very similar to the Bosch Stitch. However, there's no depth of drive adjustment. There's no tool-free way to clear jam. And this gun did not come with a quick connect, so we had to provide that on our own. It's not a big deal. It was a standard size 1/4 inch NPT, but that didn't have that. As you look at the Spot Nails, we see a lot of features that we don't see on all of them. There's a depth of drive adjustment, which is great because we can change how deep those staples are. There's also a way to clear jams without tools. And this one came with its own fitting, and it also came with an adapter so that if we wanted to run a 3/8 fitting on here, we could do that. We're gonna be using 1/4 inch hoses for all of these, so that didn't really matter for us, but that's a nice feature. This magazine is also very straightforward, very simple to operate. It's also one of the lighter guns. As you look at the Senko, this is one of the heavier, more solid guns. It feels very well put together. It has a very nice build quality, but it is heavy. This has the tool-free jam clearing. It has a depth of drive adjustment. But what we were not happy with is that it did not come with the fitting, and it has a 3/8 opening. So it was a little bit difficult for us to find one of them. We didn't have one on hand, but we made that work. On the plus side, it's got a really nice hook, which none of these have other than the Senko. The only other issue we saw was that this particular magazine is a little challenging to operate. In order to release it, you have to push in a button that's a little awkward to get to. Maybe that'll loosen up, maybe we'll get better at that, but just initial impressions. And then this type of spring, this rolled piece of metal, may become an issue out here in the dust. So we're gonna keep an eye on that and see if that poses any problems as well. Finally, the DeWalt is also a very solid, well put together gun. It's got our jam-free clearing, no depth of drive adjustment, no hook, but it did come with a pre-installed air fitting, even with a little dust cover. So that was nice. Same thing with this magazine though. We've got this spring steel. It's a little narrower than the Senko. We're curious to see if this will be an issue out here. This one also is a little harder to release. You have to push a button in order to do that. Not sure how big of a challenge that will be, but that's something we're gonna look at as well. First impressions, the DeWalt and the Senko are definitely the heaviest and the most solid, but I think all of these staplers have some great features, and we're looking forward to giving them a good test out here. This gun works a lot better on this than the insulators. Won't rapid fire all the way out. That's good to know. Much better. Still prefer the other one, but this isn't too bad. Gotta hold it, it's the only way it'll fire. And even then it's a little iffy. If I don't hold it, stop shooting staples. No good. Not driving any of them deep enough. And it's still having an issue with me having to hold it to even get them to come out. I think we're going to stop using this one for the day. It has been a long couple of weeks of work here at the Wild Animal Sanctuary, and we've been able to give these staplers a really good run for their money. And we've been able to find out a lot more about each of these. So what we're going to do is go through and talk about some of the things that we found out about these different staplers. Before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about how we were using these. So we started by using these on installing insulators, which are plastic pieces that get stapled to the poles. When we were doing that, we had to try some different depths of drive. Some of these staplers allow you to adjust that on it. Other ones, we had to adjust the pressure from the compressor. But the goal was to staple them on without overdriving the staple and splitting through the plastic, but also being able to consistently drive at the same depth to make sure that we could hold that level. So that was the first test. And then the second test was actually installing fencing. And so for the fencing, we had a ton of telephone poles that all had to get stapled on 19 different lines of fencing on each post. So that meant that by the time we were done with each post, we put nearly 100 staples on each one. So every one of these staples that had to be driven, the actual stapler was hitting metal every single time. And so it's very difficult on one of these staplers doing that because it's a high tensile wire that's very dense. And what'll happen is the driver that's actually pushing the staple in will start to peen over on the edge. And we saw on some of these that there were some issues where that started to happen, but they still kept functioning, which we were impressed with. I suspect if we kept using them, there would be a point we'd have to take them apart and actually file down that rounded over edge. So after all that, we shot over 50,000 staples and got a pretty good feel for how these staplers work. So I'm just gonna go through one by one and talk about our impressions, and we're gonna talk about which ones were the team's favorites as well. The Everwin stapler, as I said earlier, this was one that was pretty familiar because it's extremely similar to the Boss Stitch stapler, but it's quite a bit less expensive. So when we started looking at these, I had said there was no way to clear a jam without tools, which I was actually incorrect on. We found that you can bring down the tension off the magazine and then turn a little lever down here. You can see as I did that, a staple just fell out. And so when we did have jams with this stapler, we were able to very quickly clear them. We really didn't have any jams that were unable to be cleared without doing this, and maybe a pair of pliers just to get it out. But overall, the Everwins were very reliable and very easy to work with. They did pretty well against the fence, but we did find that these were pretty susceptible to the ends peening over. And so we started to have more jams as we got toward the end. But overall, we were really happy with the Everwins. As far as the DeWalt, we really had a pretty similar experience. This was also a very reliable stapler. This does have the tool-free method of clearing the jam. However, we found that this was difficult to flip, but when we did get it open, a lot of the times there was a little more wrestling to try to get the staple out. So the Everwin won in that category. It's just much easier to clear jams. Another consideration with this stapler is that the spring for the magazine is a flat piece of spring material, and we did find a couple times the staples would actually, as we were loading it quickly, the staples would slide underneath that material. Not a big deal, but it hung up a couple times. This one was also a little bit harder to release. It will hold itself down, and you have to press a pretty small button on here in order to get that tension to come up. But overall, very reliable stapler. The only issue that made it a little bit frustrating for what we were doing, and it probably wouldn't be an issue for a lot of other tasks, was that there's no depth of drive adjustment for this stapler. And we found that when we were stapling insulators and we pushed it against a pole, it didn't want to fire when it was perfectly parallel to the pole. And so what needed to happen was the stapler needed to be tilted down a bit more to engage that safety. But when you're against a flat surface, a lot of the times you can't actually tilt it far enough. So what we would have to do is actually take it and swing it to the side and tilt it, and that would do the trick. So that was a minor annoyance, but again, I think if you were doing something different than what we were, probably would not be an issue. Had a very fast bump fire mode, just like the Everwind, and so this was another one that our team was reaching for quite a bit. When we get to the spot nails, this was another very reliable stapler, but we had similar issues with the safety on the end and being pushed in far enough to engage. Slightly better than the DeWalt though, because this one does have a depth of drive adjustment. And so for the different tasks we were using it for, we were able to adjust that in or out, which really helped. It was a little frustrating until we did that, but once we got that dialed in, we were very quickly able to get it to do what we needed it to do. This magazine is a pretty simple one, and it worked fine for us. We did have some issues with jamming on the spot nails, where the staple would get stuck in between the driver and either the top or the bottom of this channel that the staples are coming out of. And so we had one jam that we were unable to clear in the field. We had to bring it back to our trailer and get some tools out and break it free. So even with this tool-free change here, it still wasn't quite able to be cleared. But still a very reliable gun otherwise. It was able to shoot staples very quickly and get the job done. And then our fourth gun was the Senko stapler, and I have to say this one was a bit of a disappointment. Our team has generally had great experiences with Senko nail guns, and this one initially has the best build quality. It feels really solid, it's weighted nicely. And Senko sent 15,000 of their staples, which this stapler requires. However, we were really unable to give these staplers a good test for a couple of reasons. One is that the staples that they sent are actually pinched in, and so instead of being an even C shape, they're actually more narrow at the tip of the stapler. And what happens is that these staples actually get pinched on this magazine, and so it's very difficult to actually slide them on here. And so what we found was that as we were stapling, the only way to get it to reliably feed was actually to hold up tension on the bottom. And so you would have to keep a hand on here as you were stapling, which really was not something that was feasible for very long. And then even when you were doing that, we found that every 6 to 10 staples, we would have a jam, and the jams were pretty difficult to clear. We were able to open the top, but it seemed like 9 out of 10 times when this stapler jammed, it required other tools to get it cleared. And so this one spent a lot of time in the truck. Our team was not a fan of this, and we really tried to give it a good test. We have 2 of these, we tried both. We tried multiple boxes of staples. We even tried filing down the plastic edge on here a little bit to try to make it so the staples could smoothly move up and down, and it really just never was able to get the job done for us. So this one was really disappointing. We had high hopes for this stapler, but we probably only got 200 staples through it before we just gave up. And the other issue we had was that this magazine is a little bit challenging to release. Sometimes you can hit it and it would go, but pushing the button was not super reliable. So unfortunately, this stapler did not live up to what we had hoped it would. So having talked through all these and having used all of these, I surveyed our team's opinions, and the one that we all found ourselves reaching for, and it lived up to its namesake, was the Everwind. We all preferred this stapler for what we were doing. The rate of fire was good, the ability to clear jams was good, and it didn't jam very often. So for the money, this is an amazing stapler, and we will certainly be recommending these to the sanctuary out here, and I would absolutely buy these again. Comparing these to the Boss Stitch staplers, at a $90 cost savings, I would buy this any day of the week. This is just a very reliable, easy to use stapler. And in second place for us was the DeWalt, and for all the same reasons. The DeWalt was very reliable. The only thing that had us getting this out of the truck a little bit less was just that issue with having to tilt the stapler in order to get it to fire. And then finally, the Spot Nails was our third place. And again, still very reliable stapler. The only issue for us with this one was the jams being difficult to clear. And I really think that the rate of fire and the sheer number of staples we were firing really played a big part in that. So I wouldn't hesitate to recommend any of these staplers. I think they're all very reliable, and we really appreciate all these manufacturers sending these out and letting us play with them. And other than the Senko, these will all stay here and continue to be used. The Everwin was definitely our clear choice, but we would take any of these three staplers, the Everwin, the DeWalt, or the Spot Nails, for this job or for really any other job. They really all got the job done, and they did it with minimal issues. And I think an application that was a little less rigorous than this one, these would all excel in. We just want to send a huge thank you to all of these manufacturers for sending us these staplers. We really appreciate being able to try them and to share that information with this sanctuary here, and that's going to save them time and money going forward and let them know what the right tool for the right job is. We really want to send a shout out to Nail Gun Depot for making this happen, for arranging all of these to be tested out here, and for providing 50,000 staples for us to get this tiger habitat put together. So thanks to them, and thanks to a lot of hard work, we've been able to get this thing done. We're putting in the final pieces today. We've got some new tiger dens going in, and then those animals are going to be able to enjoy a huge 50-acre habitat. So we're really thankful for the support. We hope that this video helps you in your search for your next wide crown stapler.